You that are still holding out hope that this Cleveland Browns season can somewhat turn in to a success, which maybe means, challenging for a playoff berth. This is probably the week that'll make or break those hopes. If those hopes want to stay alive, you're going to need a win this week. And on paper, the New England Patriots are a pretty formidable opponent. We'll break it all down. The pregame show, Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network, begins now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, and we appreciate each and every one of you who come to the OBR each and every day for your favorite Cleveland Browns coverage. Whether it's the written content at the OBR.com, while you were there going through the fantastic articles from our great staff of writers, make sure that you look into the VIP package. You will have the insider forums, ask the insiders. Your subscription will get bundled with a subscription of Paramount Plus, which will lead to all the great UFC action beginning in January. Of course, a bunch of great shows to stream right now as well. And for all of you to come out daily to the OBR streaming network beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern every single day with Browns 3D, we thank you, of course, all for all your support over there as well. Make sure you're subscribed to the page on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the page on Twitch. Comments, likes, all the good stuff. We appreciate you. Now, this is a very interesting matchup. There are factors here for both teams that you would think would equate to some success. The New England Patriots do a very good job of stopping the run. The Cleveland Browns defense, said and mouthed by the head coach of the New England Patriots, Mike Vrabel, is described as the best defense the New England Patriots have faced to this point. For the Cleveland Browns and their struggling passing game, if there was one weakness with the New England Patriots defense, it is the passing game. We should probably start there, right? But we have obviously our final injury report of the week. So we're going to go with that. Of course, I don't want to be the guy, so I won't exactly say it, but health wise, Cleveland Browns, you know, we don't want to go any further with that, of course. Two players listed with a questionable status for this week. That would be tight end David Njoku, who has been limited in practice throughout the entire week, so a good sign. And rookie defensive tackle Aiden Huntington was on the practice field today. Now, again, concussion protocol. So first time back on the field this week for Aiden Huntington since the concussion suffered on Sunday against the Dolphins. Now, I'm assuming there would be a brief walkthrough tomorrow morning. Then from there, the players go to the airport, make their way, of course, to Foxborough, Massachusetts. If Huntington gets through tomorrow's practice with no issues, he would be eligible, most likely, to be able to play on Sunday. But there is an if here. The Browns have announced that second-year defensive tackle Mike Hall will make his 2025 debut on Sunday. With that announcement, obviously somebody who is a regular to the dress list on game day would not be dressing. So my belief would maybe be the Browns might be cautious with Aiden Huntington, leave Aiden Huntington here in Cleveland. If he passes the protocol, I certainly could take him with you. So maybe Aiden Huntington would be the guy who did not dress this week, just out of precaution. And they would dress, of course, Michael, who will make his debut. Certainly excited to finally get Mike Hall back on the field. I haven't gotten an opportunity to see one rep yet of what should be the Cleveland Browns starting defensive tackle duo, hopefully for years to come. Mike Hall, Mason Graham. Potential of that duo is certainly enticing. Hall, as we all know, the rookie year certainly had its issues, off the field. a suspension, injury. Then Mike gets back. The play starts to pick up a little bit. And then, of course, the brutal injury in the season finale in Baltimore. We've here at the OBR, and of course through Pete Smith, have had an early glimpse of Mike Hall, going all the way back to his high school days at Streetsboro. And the potential is there in spades to the roof for Mike Hall. Special talent. Things we're going to be looking for is obviously going to be where is Mike within his recovery and his rehab? Good enough to play doesn't necessarily mean 110% all the way back. Hall has looked good in the brief things that have been, available to the public eye. And Mike is a guy where athleticism is a huge part of how he wins. So all things to be monitored, of course, when we go at this here this week. There's been so many questions. Why wasn't he put on IR? Why didn't the Browns put Mike Hall on IR? Somebody in that defensive tackle room is most likely not dressing each and every week. You already dressed 4. Shelby Harris, of course. The Mason Graham, of course. Aiden Huntington has been a regular participant. Malik Collins has been fantastic to this point. Now you're bringing Mike Hall into the mix. So there's a good chance teams don't normally dress 5 defensive tackles. Of course, the Browns could make it interesting here and make Joe Tryanka inactive, which could certainly be something that they could do. I think, that signing, I'm not, to say the signing hasn't worked is fair, but they brought Joe Tryon in, and I think Cam Thomas, who was here, just kind of showed that, he was more deserving of the snaps. So maybe Joe Tryon could be the guy, even though he does play some specials, could be the guy who maybe finds his name off the dress list. I think it'll all depend, of course, on the ultimate availability, of course, of Aiden Huntington. But this whole Graham duo, and hopefully these young men have their ears wide open and working with Malik Collins and can soak up every bit. Because the most difficult thing from being an interior player and, getting into the league is, continuing to develop as a pass rusher. And Malik Collins is a guy where it's really, really gotten strong for him over the last few years. As a veteran, he's gotten even better and better with it. Hopefully, Graham and Hall can, hit the accelerator in their development by constantly watching Malik Collins, by constantly picking Malik Collins' brain. So happy to see and happy to have Mike Hall finally back in the fold. Now you figure probably, my guess would be somewhere to be 10 to 15 snaps. You got to keep in mind it is late October and Mike's last football was first Sunday of January. So long road to get back. Talking essentially 11 months for Mike Hall, but here he is, right? Now, the Patriots pass defense, and look, it's not the strongest part of their game. Kyler Duggar, who was always supposed to be a big part of their plans, new regimes come in, new coaches come in, obviously, and Kyle Duggar, who's sitting there on a pretty nice contract extension, is not necessarily a huge part of this team right now. And, kind of in and out as far as, how much he is a contributor on Sundays. The Browns, it's kind of now or never, I think, with Dillon Gabriel. And I'm not saying we're going to start Shedeur Sanders after the bye and for anybody. Yes, the Browns are on bye after this. Yes. I think, and I've done some speaking on this, and I did a show yesterday with some Patriot guys. The protection of the football has been fantastic for Dillon Gabriel, of course. But protection versus production. I'll take the production. You know what I'm saying? Every quarterback's going to make a mistake. Every quarterback's going to, every now and then, you're going to just get hit so hard you fumble. Every now and then, it's going to be an interception, a bad ball thrown, whatever. You also got to factor in that the guys on defense are actually pretty damn good as well. They have the capability of making plays, of course. But Dillon Gabriel has now had, reps in 5 games, started 3. And the weather should not be an issue on Sunday in Foxborough. I mean, it's going to be, nasty. I mean, not nasty, I won't say, but, cold, dark, autumn day in the Northeast. If you've ever been in that part of the area, I don't have to tell you what a fall Sunday in October in the New England area looks like. It's pretty self-explanatory. But for Gabriel, this is time, and the completion percentage has to go up. The yards per attempt have to go up. The passing yards have to go up. Passing touchdowns, we would love to go up. Browns are going to have to show a little faith in him. And, most importantly, Dillon Gabriel's going to have some faith in himself. You can't do it alone. And that is, part of the issue here, of course. Jerry Jeudy has got to start looking like the 2020 form of Jerry Jeudy. And the last couple of weeks, to their credit, the Browns have been trying to get him going, have been trying to pump the ball into number 3 and get him going. Pittsburgh game, Jerry Jeudy ended up, shooting himself in the foot as, the Browns were trying to get him involved early. Play or two last week, certainly and fairly not the easiest game to judge anything offensively, certainly anything offensively that would involve a passing game, of course. This has to, be in a more important part and a more stable part of this Browns offense, especially against a team that has not allowed one single running back to eclipse 50 yards yet to this point. This team needs this, man. They really do. This team needs to get better. This team needs to improve on the offensive side of the ball. The wide receivers have to play better. The offensive line has to be more consistent. And Dillon Gabriel has to raise his level. And whether Dillon Gabriel is playing a little gun shy or Dillon Gabriel is missing some open targets, probably safe to say that maybe both are true. The level, it just has to pick up the level of play. And I've said a million times, and I'll say again another million times that, I don't think there's anything Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders can do here in 2025 that is going to stop the inevitable that's going to come in April. But that doesn't mean we still don't hope these guys don't look really good, right? We don't see growth. We don't see some, positivity in production. Gabriel's got to just figure it out and figure out who his guys are. The Browns play every wide receiver. So it's not like, he has to be headstrong on getting Jerry Jeudy to be the most prolific wide receiver. Probably has more experience throwing the ball to Gage Lavardane, if we're being completely honest. Malachi Corley certainly brings an interesting skill set as a guy who can work over the middle and has great yard after the catch ability. Jamari Thrash had the longest reception from scrimmage last week for the Cleveland Browns. Isaiah Bond, unless they can start throwing the ball down the field a little bit more consistently, I think Isaiah Bond is a square peg in a round hole right now in this Cleveland Browns offense. Because Isaiah Bond's game in Texas, was, basically go deep or put the fear in people that he was going to go deep. Then, work over the hashes, catch the ball. And again, in college, had nice yard after the catch ability as well. It's going to get harder and harder for Quinshon Judkins to be productive if the Cleveland Browns cannot throw the ball with some consistency. There's just no way around it. The offensive line, it appears, I guess, that we are going to have, the most likely Conklin, Teller, Posick, Batonio, Cam Robinson, which are probably the Browns' best 5, which is going to put KT Levittson probably in a blocking tight end role, unless they run with Whippler. I think Quinshawn Judkins will snap this, no rusher over 50 yards. He hasn't run, other than Pittsburgh, he hasn't run less for that in any game yet at this point. And you got to remember, Q's got some big playability, and he's had three runs over 30, and had a couple others that were called back by penalty. So we know Q's got the ability to hit the big one. Really need it, but it's just a balance game, and the Browns unfortunately just don't have that right now. And I don't want to poo-poo anything Q's done because he's been fantastic. But I think anybody that thinks the Cleveland Browns run game right now is what it was in 2021, you're fooling yourselves. They're running the ball better if you're basically looking at 2024 as your barometer. Yeah, they're running better than they did in 2024. I wouldn't say they're running good. They're running above average. Not good. It's not great. I think Q's going to be the guy that's, sets that number back this week. And the Patriots, if they want to start that streak all over again, go ahead and knock yourself the hell out. Who cares? It's New England once, right? Njoku and Fannin obviously are key. And, you don't want that to necessarily be the number one part of your passing offense. But I think David's going to go personally. And I think Harold Fannin to this point has actually showed extremely well. And I think there's going to be, I think the Pittsburgh game, and, those numbers certainly are dwarfs by the way that, end of the game went. But I think there's another big Harold Fannin game in him. And he's been so creative, and he's kind of just unique in the fact that, if you were just to look at him, and like, impressive looking athlete, but nothing wows you athletically. I think Harold Fannin is, light years ahead as far as his football intelligence and his football IQ. He's just a great route runner. And normally guys that are just 21 years old in the NFL and certainly playing the tight end position, it doesn't usually come that quickly, doesn't come that easily for a young guy early. But to this point, it has. And all the credit goes, certainly, to Harold Fannin. Run some of these tight end screens. There's a lot of creativity. And that should be first and foremost on Kevin Stefanski's and Tommy Rees's, basically list of things to do this week. Mike Vrabel just spent a year with all of you. He knows what you like to do. He knows your tendencies. He saw a lot of your offense. So you guys, myself, we all know this team well. So the expectation should be on Sunday that we're going to see some things out of the Cleveland Browns on the offensive side of the ball that we probably have not seen or haven't seen for a while. I hope Coach Stefanski and Tommy Rees just don't think they're going to come into this game against a Mike Vrabel-led defense and just go mano-a-mano and get the best of them. Don't see it happening. Now, Drake May is really, really, and he was good. He really was good as a rookie. And I think because the Patriots overall weren't good, I think people didn't maybe appreciate how well Drake May played last year. And it certainly doesn't help when, the quarterback in your draft class and Jaden Daniels, coached the NFC Championship game. But the difference, I think, in Drake May this year and where you're seeing the growth and obviously the improvement is, the deep game. It's, they throw it deep. As much as the Cleveland Browns don't, the New England Patriots do. You're going to have Stephon Diggs and Kayshon Boutte, and those two will probably be around Denzel Ward and Tyson Campbell the entire day. Just one last time. Let's give a little kudos to the Tyson Campbell move. I think that's one that we're probably going to sit back and talk about and reflect upon and look back upon, a few more times this year, a lot in the years to come. I think his play style, in a Jim Schwartz system is probably, a perfect match for Campbell, and maybe even more importantly, a perfect match for a guy like Jim Schwartz. They'll run. And this is kind of what maybe scares me a little bit because when the Cleveland Browns over last couple of years with Jim Schwartz here, and we get into some of these matchups and we're like, oh, this team doesn't do this well, and the Browns will shut it down. That's usually when, we get the polar opposite. But, the top two backs are like 3.5 yards per carry. That's certainly not getting anything done. You very much have to worry about Drake May and his legs. Smart competitor, great athlete, was a great high school basketball player as well. So he can move. Carson Schlesinger, it's going to be a chore. Making sure you have your coverage, have your zone. You're looking at the backs, you're looking at the tight ends, but, first and foremost, there's going to be responsibility, obviously, for knowing where Drake May is and obviously attending to Drake May and making sure Drake May is taken care of. Stephon Diggs is not all the way back to Stephon Diggs. And to be fair, with the injury suffered at his age, maybe he doesn't get there, but he's still producing very well. 90% of Stephon Diggs is a hell of a lot better than a lot of wide receivers that ever played in this league, of course. Kayshon Boutte is one there, I'll take the, self clap on the back. He was a guy I thought would be really good coming out of LSU and took a little time, and obviously in his years in New England, but he's finally hitting that mark. Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, certainly old friends. Well, Austin Hooper at least. And these guys find a way to find pay dirt. Great red zone tight ends. We'll get to see, of course, number one pick, Will Campbell. And I'm sure he's going to get a pretty healthy amount of number 95, Myles Garrett. And I think Myles had a little more juice to him last week. And, we know that Myles, missed some practice over the previous 2 weeks. So, we know that maybe Myles was, I guess it was the ankle is what it was called. So maybe not 100%, but certainly, ready to go on game day. We don't have to tell any of you, obviously, when Myles Garrett is on a heater, what exactly he means to this defense and the terror he can cause and the mass confusion he can cause to any offense. Certainly the quarterback who's thinking about everything and thinking twice about Myles Garrett, of course. Patriots defense, and they're stopping the run game. It's a good defensive line and a veteran laden, guys that Mike Vrabel can trust. Harold Landry here, again, a guy Mike Vrabel knows and Mike Vrabel trusts. Christian Gonzalez is a pretty damn good cornerback. Jerry Judy's going to get off the schneid. It's going to take some solid work from him to do it against a guy like Christian Gonzalez. But the Browns come in this game and it's 2-5. Now, if it's 2-6 and you go to the bye, I think we all kind of know, what the feels and the vibes are going to be as far as what is this 2025 season. But the Browns get this one, and it's 3-5, and it's 2 straight wins. Then you get the bye, and it's the New York Jets coming out of the bye. You get to 4-5, all of a sudden, oh man, it got interesting. But again, it's not going to mean a hill of beans, and it's not going to matter if you don't find a way to get this done. The Browns don't travel well. They just don't play as well on the road. The defense is not as dominant on the road as we've seen it be at home. That needs to change. Browns are wearing the all whites. I know that all kind of gives us a little creepy crawlies because the all whites don't necessarily lead to some of the better road moments if there are bitter moments for the Cleveland Browns. And I know a lot are discouraged on where this team is at right now. But for me, once, basically the final whistle sounded on 2024, I wasn't one that thought 2025 was going to be the turnaround, was going to be the answer. I thought it was going to be the beginning of it. I thought it was going to be a 2-year process before they got this everything in place. And, again, nobody wants to talk necessarily about where this team is at right now. I will, and I will constantly. This team has done a great job in getting younger. We all know and talk daily about the exploits of this rookie class to this point, and they deserve it, and how deep it actually is. But whether it's the guys who were drafted or the undrafted free agents, it's a good group. It's got some good, young, hardworking, hungry players that are relishing every opportunity they get. Donovan McMillan, late in the game, Sunday, with a sack. You hope, obviously, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But for a guy like McMillan, you've been waiting for that opportunity since you were 7 years old. Ronnie Hickman is going to be pretty big in this one because if you think, and we talk obviously about the fact that, Patriots don't have much of an issue going vertical, you certainly have to bring the free safety into the equation here. And, the deep vertical has not always been Ronnie's strong point. It's going to have to be this week. Because, with the Patriots and what you see with being able to hit, some of them big shots it just opens everything else up. And for New England, they're also hoping that it'll open up some opportunities, of course, to maybe get that running game going for them finally, which has really been stagnant to this point through 7 weeks. We'll have the first NFL meeting, of course, of, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. And, I think everybody thought a million different ways about how this was going to go for both of these two guys to this point. And, I think a lot of people have certainly with all the time that Q missed over the summer just figured, well, and while Travion Henderson was lighting up the scoreboard for the New England Patriots, but once it became go time, it's just not really been there for Travion. And, the thing that I think Travion Henderson is in a difficult spot is the team is 5-2. So they don't necessarily have to force the Travion Henderson touches because they're successful. If they weren't successful on offense and their record wasn't a success at 5-2, you'd have a lot of finger pointing and a lot of people saying, well, maybe you're losing because you're not playing the guy, you drafted in the top 40. Whereas for Q, once everything off the field disappeared and he was able just to play the game, it's gone well, extremely well for Quinshon. Your big news, Mike Hall will be back this week making his 2025 NFL debut. All pretty much excited for that for Cleveland, of course. I'm the only one in the Slack, in the OBR Slack, that actually has picked the Cleveland Browns to win. I think the defense is going to bring it for a second straight week. And it's not going to be pretty. You're not going to take pictures of it. You're not going to send the video to your grandma. But I think somehow, some way, the Cleveland Browns do just enough offensively, and the defense aids them throughout. And the Browns sneak out of Foxborough with a 19-16 win. Go to 3-5. Go to the bye. Vibes are high. Jets, week 10. Appreciate you all for coming to the OBR every day. Make sure you check out the VIP access at theobr.com. Insider forums, ask the insiders, have your subscription bundle with Paramount Plus. And for everybody who supports us here at the OBR Streaming Network, we cannot be more thankful. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR over on Twitch. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. Browns 3D on the OBR Streaming Network, and we'll see you Sunday after the game.